My parents took my college fund to pay for my sister's wedding, so I got rich without them and refused to help when they lost everything. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and I used to think my parents cared about my future as much as I did. Growing up, college wasn't just a dream, it was the family mission statement. Every dinner conversation somehow circled back to, when you go to college, as if it was the holy land we were all marching toward. My parents made it clear, study hard, stay out of trouble, and we'll make sure you're taken care of when the time comes. So I did exactly that. While my friends spent summers goofing off, I stacked shelves at a grocery store and spent nights cramming for exams. My dad used to pat my shoulder and say, "Keep this up and you'll never have to struggle like we did." My mom would smile and mention how they were putting money aside for my tuition every month. "Your future's safe, honey." Those words became my fuel. I still remember the smell of that spring morning when the acceptance letter arrived. Fresh coffee, Mom's pancakes, sunlight spilling across the kitchen counter. My hands trembled as I tore the envelope open. "Congratulations." The word blurred through tears I didn't even know were forming. I'd gotten into my top choice university, something my entire family had pushed me toward since middle school. I ran to show them. My mom screamed and hugged me like I'd just won the lottery. My dad even took the day off work to celebrate. For the first time, I felt everything they'd promised had finally come full circle. The years of effort, the part-time jobs, the sleepless nights. That evening, I remember sitting in my room, staring at the acceptance letter pinned to my wall, thinking, this is it. This is the beginning of everything they prepared me for. If only I'd known that what they were building wasn't my future, it was theirs. The first time I heard about my sister's engagement, I was genuinely happy for her. Amanda was 2 years older than me, always the center of attention, the kind of person who made every room feel like her stage. When she announced that her boyfriend Tyler had proposed, my mom screamed loud enough for the neighbors to know. My dad opened a bottle of champagne that had been saved for a special occasion. Apparently, this was it. At first, it felt like a family celebration. But as the days passed, I noticed something shift. Every conversation, every weekend, every penny seemed to orbit around Amanda's wedding. She wanted a designer dress, a luxury venue, and a guest list longer than some celebrity events. My mom started saying things like, "A wedding like this only happens once," and my dad, who usually preached about being practical, suddenly became her personal accountant. One night, as I came home from work, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. "We can't afford this." "Nancy," my dad said quietly. "We'll find a way," my mom replied. "She deserves her dream day." My heart sank when I heard him mutter, "What about the college fund?" I froze. My college fund? The next morning I asked my mom directly. She brushed it off with a tight smile. "Oh, honey, don't worry about that. We'll handle everything. Focus on your studies." Her voice sounded too calm, too rehearsed. But as weeks went by, the house filled with wedding catalogs and vendor invoices. The numbers didn't add up. I noticed checks being written, savings accounts being discussed in whispers. Then one night, I caught a glimpse of a document on the kitchen counter. My name on a bank statement I'd never seen before. The balance was zero. My stomach dropped. My entire future, the one they'd promised and I'd worked for, was gone. And the worst part, the wedding was still months away. When I confronted my parents, my voice was shaking so hard it barely sounded like me. "Did you use my college fund?" I asked, holding the statement in my hand. My mom froze mid-step, her face pale. My dad didn't even look up from the newspaper. After a long, suffocating silence, he sighed. "It was a family decision," he said flatly. "A family decision?" I repeated, my chest tightening. "You took the money meant for my education, for my future, and used it for a wedding." My mom tried to soften it. "Sweetheart, your sister needed help. You're smart. You'll figure out scholarships or community college later." This was her big moment. She only gets one. I could barely breathe. Years of promises, every ounce of trust, they vanished in that instant. Amanda walked in halfway through the argument, her hair wrapped in curlers, a smug look plastered across her face. "Oh my God, are you still whining about that?" she scoffed. "It's not like you were even in college yet. Stop being selfish. Selfish. That word hit harder than anything else. My mom placed a hand on my arm, her tone rehearsed. Family sacrifices, honey. Someday you'll understand, I pulled away. Yeah, I'm starting to. The next few weeks felt like living in a bad dream. Every time I walked through the house, I saw pieces of my future turned into centerpieces and floral arrangements. Invitations scattered across the table, a cake-tasting menu pinned to the fridge. They didn't even seem guilty, just annoyed that I wouldn't let it go. The day of Amanda's wedding, I stood at the back of the venue, watching her walk down the aisle in a $6,000 gown, money that was supposed to buy my first semester. Everyone cheered as if it were some fairy tale. I clapped too, but not for her. I clapped for the moment I finally realized I was done being the fool who believed in their promises. After the wedding, the house felt different. Not quieter, just emptier, like something inside me had been scraped out. My parents went back to their normal lives, pretending nothing had happened. The only reminder of what they'd done were the wedding photos framed on every wall, Amanda in her sparkling gown, my parents beaming beside her, and me standing in the corner, forced smile, hollow eyes. When the tuition deadline came and went, I didn't bother reminding them. My father offered a half-hearted, "We'll figure something out," while my mother suggested I take a gap year to work and gain perspective. What they really meant was, "You're on your own," so I worked. I took every job that would have me, warehouse shifts, deliveries, late-night data entry gigs. I'd come home reeking of sweat and cardboard, collapse onto my mattress, and stare at the ceiling, wondering how parents could just steal from their own child. There were nights I'd hear laughter from the living room, Amanda visiting, bragging about her honeymoon in Greece, her voice slicing through my paper-thin walls. "Tyler says Santorini was magical," she'd gush. "Good for you," I'd mutter to myself, dragging another resume onto the printer. When I wasn't working, I started teaching myself coding. I'd sit at a second-hand laptop, fingers trembling from exhaustion, eyes burning from the screen glow. I didn't have anyone cheering me on this time, no proud parents, no promises, no safety net. Just quiet determination and too much anger to quit. One night, after a 14-hour shift, I wrote in my notebook, "They took my future, so I'll build one they can't touch." It wasn't inspiration, it was survival. And in that exhaustion, something changed. The naive kid who believed in family was gone. What replaced him was someone no one in that house would ever recognize again. The turning point came on a night I almost quit. I'd been juggling 2 part-time jobs and barely making rent. My old laptop froze mid-project, and I remember slamming my fist on the table so hard the screen cracked. I just sat there shaking, staring at the spiderweb of broken pixels, whispering, maybe they were right. Maybe I'll never amount to anything. But something inside me refused to die. I borrowed a friend's laptop and kept going. I poured every free hour into learning, YouTube tutorials, free online courses, coding forums. My body was exhausted, but my brain was starving for progress. Then, out of nowhere, I got my first client. A small local business needed a website. They couldn't pay much, but when that first $300 hit my account, it felt like $1 million. Not because of the money, but because I earned it alone. No one could take it from me. I started stacking projects, freelancing for small startups and entrepreneurs, slowly upgrading my gear. Every invoice felt like another piece of my freedom being welded together. My friends didn't understand why I never went out anymore. They didn't see the nights I coded until sunrise, the keyboard clicks echoing through a silent apartment that smelled like instant noodles and determination when I finally told my parents I was doing all right. They brushed it off. "That's good," my dad said, barely looking up from his phone. "Maybe you'll save enough for college next year." He still didn't get it. I wasn't trying to go to college anymore. I was building something bigger. By the end of that year, I was making more than I ever thought possible. I didn't tell them. I didn't tell anyone. Because this time, my success wasn't for them. It was for me. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. 2 years later, my life looked nothing like before. I had clients across 3 countries, a small but loyal team, and a bank account that finally made the struggle feel worth it. I'd gone from sleeping on a worn mattress to renting a studio apartment with city lights spilling through the window, a view that reminded me every night how far I'd come without them. Then one afternoon, as I was finishing a client call, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin. "Hey, did you hear about Amanda?" At first, I didn't even want to ask, but curiosity got the better of me. "She's getting divorced," he replied. "Tyler racked up a ton of debt. They're losing their house." For a moment, I didn't know how to feel. Shock? Satisfaction? I'd spent years trying not to think about her, but the irony hit me hard. The sister who called me selfish for wanting my own education had married a man drowning in greed. And now, the perfect life she flaunted was collapsing. A week later, my mom called for the first time in months. Her voice was soft, careful. "Honey, things have been difficult for your sister," she said. "She's going through a lot." I didn't respond. I just listened. She might need a little help. Family helps family, right? Family. That word again. I wanted to laugh, loudly. Because when I needed help, they'd emptied my future to buy wedding fireworks. But now that their golden child's world was crumbling, they suddenly remembered my number. "I hope she figures it out," I said. My tone calm but sharp. Silence. Then she whispered, "You've changed." "Yeah," I said quietly. That was the point. That night, I looked out at the city again, realizing this was more than karma. It was the first sign that the universe keeps its own scorecard. By the time I hit 25, my small agency had turned into a full-fledged business. I had employees, contracts, and clients who actually used words like game changer to describe my work. I should have felt proud, unstoppable even. But the one thing I hadn't prepared for was hearing my mother's voice again. It happened on a random Tuesday afternoon. My phone lit up with her name. I almost ignored it, but something in me hesitated. I answered, and her tone was trembling, fragile in a way I hadn't heard before. "Sweetheart." "We need to talk." The words felt heavy. A week later, I agreed to meet them at a quiet diner on the edge of town. When I walked in, I barely recognized them. My dad looked older, his posture sunken. My mom's hair was streaked with gray, she hadn't bothered to dye. And Amanda. She was there too, sitting across from them, her eyes swollen from crying. She spoke first. "Tyler's gone. He left after maxing out the credit cards. I don't even have rent money this month," my dad added. "And we're having some issues with the house. Medical bills, mortgage. We're falling behind." Then my mom leaned forward, her voice soft and trembling. "You've done so well for yourself, and we're so proud of you. We just need a little help getting back on our feet." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at them. 3 people who once made me feel invisible, now looking at me like I was their lifeline. I wanted to feel compassion. I really did. But all I could think about was that bank statement. The one with my name and a zero balance. The night they called my pain a family decision. I took a slow breath and said, "Let me think about it." But inside, I already knew my answer. After that meeting, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. First it was my mom, then my dad, then Amanda. They all had the same tone, pleading, guilt-laced, like they were reading from a family script. "Honey," my mom said in one voicemail, her voice cracking, "you know we did what we thought was best. We were just trying to hold the family together back then. Don't punish us forever." Then my dad, "You're successful now. Family should help family. That's how we survive, and Amanda, hers was the worst. You're really going to watch your own sister struggle? After everything Mom and Dad did for us? You wouldn't even have opportunities if they hadn't raised you right." That line made my blood boil. Everything I'd built, every sleepless night, every missed meal, every lonely hour of grinding, was despite them, not because of them. I wanted to scream it. Instead, I sat in silence, letting the weight of their words settle like dust on a room I'd already cleaned out. For the first time, I realized something brutal. My family didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a resource. When I had nothing, I was invisible. Now that I had something, I was suddenly family again. A week later, my mom showed up at my office unannounced. She looked around at the clean glass walls and busy employees, pretending to be proud. "You've done so well," she said softly, and it's all we ever wanted for you." Then she looked me dead in the eyes. "You can't let your own parents lose everything. That would destroy us." I met her gaze. "You destroyed me years ago," I said quietly. Her face hardened, the sweetness fading like smoke. "You're ungrateful," she hissed. "You've changed." I smiled faintly. That's what happens when people stop being used. She left in silence, but the storm she reignited inside me was far from over. After she left, I sat alone in my office long after everyone else had gone home. The glass walls reflected back a version of me I didn't even recognize. Sharp suit, steady income, confident posture. Yet inside, I felt like that 18-year-old kid again, standing in the kitchen, holding a bank statement, and begging to be seen. For the first time in years, doubt crept in. What if I really was being cruel? What if refusing to help made me just as heartless as they once were? I thought about my dad's worn-out voice, my mom's trembling hands, Amanda's tearful apology. Family was supposed to mean forgiveness. Right that night, I couldn't sleep. I opened old photo albums buried in a closet, birthdays, vacations, smiles that now looked staged. I found one of me at 12, holding up a certificate while my parents smiled proudly. On the back, my mom had written, "Our future doctor." I stared at that word, "our," and it hit me how it had never really been my future. It was always about them. Then, while scrolling through old emails, I found something that ripped the last thread of hesitation away. It was an old message chain between my mom and my aunt, dated right after the wedding. My aunt had written, "Don't you think it's unfair to use his college fund?" And my mom's reply burned through me like acid. "He'll never make it big anyway." Amanda's wedding is something people will remember. His degree? Not so much. I sat there shaking, staring at those words. All the guilt, all the doubt, it evaporated. The boy they underestimated didn't just survive. He became everything they said he'd never be. I closed the laptop, my decision clear. I wasn't their safety net. I was their lesson. A few days later, my dad called again. This time, his voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "Son, we're not asking for much," he said. "Just a small loan to get through the next few months. We'll pay you back." I almost laughed at the irony. Those were the same words they once told me about my college fund. "Sure," I said quietly. "Let's meet." We met at the same diner where they'd first begged for help. The place hadn't changed, same cracked vinyl booths, same smell of burnt coffee. But I had. My parents sat across from me, tired and worn down. Amanda wasn't there this time. I think even she knew what was coming. My mom spoke first. "We've lost the house," she said, tears gathering in her eyes. "We're staying with your aunt until we get back on our feet. Please, we're not asking for luxury, just enough to start over." I listened, my hands wrapped around the lukewarm mug in front of me. Then I said, "Do you remember the day you emptied my account for Amanda's wedding?" My dad's eyes flickered. My mom looked down. "You called it a family decision, but that decision ended mine." My voice was steady now, too steady. Years of silence had hardened it. I slept on floors. I ate instant noodles for months. I built my business from nothing while you laughed in photos at a wedding I paid for. And now you want me to fix the life you broke? Tears slid down my mother's cheeks. "We were wrong," she whispered. "I know," I said softly. "But I learned something from you, that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who you build your life with after they betray you." I stood up, left cash for the coffee, and said the only thing that truly mattered. "I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean access." Then I walked out, and this time I didn't look back. Word spread fast after that diner meeting. Within a week, distant relatives started calling, leaving passive-aggressive voicemails about how heartless I'd become. Some even messaged me online, saying things like, "You only have money because your parents raised you right. Show some respect." I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't need to defend myself. The truth had already been written, in sleepless nights, in broken screens, in every dollar I'd earned when no one believed I could. Still, I won't lie. It hurt. Family gossip spreads like wildfire, especially when you're painted as the villain. But I'd learned that silence sometimes cuts deeper than shouting. Instead of arguing, I focused on something that actually mattered. A few months later, my company got featured in a local magazine. The article called me the self-made entrepreneur who turned failure into fuel. They asked about my inspiration, and I smiled before answering. "It's simple," I said. "I was taught that if you want something done right, you do it yourself." That same week, I bought a small property in my hometown, just a few miles from where my parents had lost their house. But instead of rubbing it in, I did something better. I turned it into a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, the kind of kids who'd been told their dreams were too expensive. I named it the Future Fund. The local paper ran a story about it. My mom saw it. She texted me once. "We saw the article. You really made something of yourself." I stared at the message for a long time, then locked my phone. I didn't reply, because in that moment, I realized my revenge didn't need noise or applause. It was quiet, controlled. I'd built the future they stole, and made it bigger than anything they could have imagined. A few months passed before I heard from Amanda again. Her message came late one night. "Hey, I know I was awful to you. I didn't realize what they did until I lost everything. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time. For years, I'd fantasized about that moment, her apology, her realizing the pain she caused. But now that it was real, it didn't give me the satisfaction I'd expected. Just quiet, like standing in the aftermath of a storm that had finally burned itself out. We met for coffee a week later. She looked different, tired, humble, stripped of the entitlement that used to fill every word she spoke. She told me she was working part-time at a local boutique, trying to rebuild her life. For the first time in forever, she said something genuine. "You were right. I took everything for granted. I hope someday you can forgive me," I nodded. "I already did. I just don't think things will ever be the same again." She smiled sadly, understanding. "That's fair." As I left, I didn't feel anger. No resentment, just peace. The kind that comes when you stop chasing closure from people who will never understand the damage they caused. Months later, I stood outside my new office, a sleek glass building with my company's name gleaming across the front. A group of students I'd sponsored were walking in, laughing, holding their acceptance letters. Watching them, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: fulfillment. They would never know the story behind this scholarship, or the pain that birthed it. And that was fine, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making sure no one else had to lose their future the way I did. I took one last look at the skyline, the city I'd built myself in, and whispered, "You took everything from me, and it made me unstoppable." Then I walked inside, finally free.